Let's make some cuts with our jigsaw. Hello, happy woodworkers, man here with Heartwood Art. Today, we're going to cut some wood with our jigsaw. Now, if you didn't see part 1 of this series, go back and look at that because it tells all about basics of jigsaw settings, features, blades, speed, orbital, and more. Okay, let's get to cutting. Okay, first thing about cutting with any power tool, make sure you have your safety gear. You need eye protection and ear protection. Now, most of the time you also need a mask, but with jigsaws, you're going to be blowing around the blade to move the sawdust off. And make sure that your power is disconnected anytime you're working with the blade to put it in or such. Before you make a cut, set your jigsaw on the side of the wood and make sure that the blade tip is at least 1 inch below the material. The other thing to check for when you're clamping is to make sure where you're going to do the cut is past the edge of whatever you're clamped to. I don't know how many times I've had to go check, especially when I'm doing scrolly things, to make sure that I'm not cutting into my workbench. The other thing about cutting with jigsaw is clamping. You have to have this thing clamped down. Just holding it with your hand, you're probably going to move around. I put a clamp and my hand on it, and that helps keep it from spinning. The more clamps you can get on it, the better. It will also keep it from jumping up at you. Okay, when you make your first cut, you may be off the side of your material. Hold this as level as you can. And then you want to bring the tool up to speed before the blade hits the wood, right? And then present the blade to the wood. Now let the blade do all of the cutting. Don't push the blade into the wood faster than what it can cut. When you're cutting plywood, put the pretty side down, mark your line, and then go back and score that line to keep it from chipping out. Now, a lot of people like to use tape for this. I just prefer to score it because I can still see my line, and it really does cut down on the chip out. And score it pretty deep to get through that first layer, because that's the one that you don't want the chip out of. I use a fairly slow speed for this. Bring the tool up to speed and then present it to the wood. Now you can see how that's going just for the fun of it. I'm going to turn my orbital setting up to 2. It was on 0. As you can see, it goes much faster, but I do get a little chatter. I'm having to push down just a little more to keep it from kicking back. So I'm going to set that down to 1. We'll see how that works. I think that would work better if it were at a higher speed. But because I'm trying to avoid chip out, I don't want the higher speed. So I'm going to set it back down to 0. Okay, now I'm getting into the part where I didn't score the line. All right, be sure not to hold that up too much, you'll bind it. Let's see how we did. Yeah, right here where I did the orbital, I've got more tear out and chip out where I did the orbital. Let's bring this in. I don't know how well that's showing up on the camera, but this was real smooth. Where I turned on that orbital, I do have chip out all through that area. And then over here where I didn't score it, it's okay, but that won't be true on all plywoods. Okay, unclamp this. Flip it over and see what the pretty side looks like. No tear out whatsoever. Perfectly clean cut. And that's why you put it face down. So one of the things that jigsaws can do better than any other tools, cut wavy lines. You really need to get your speed, material, and blade right for how wavy your lines are. So if it's gradual wave, you'll be okay with the general purpose blade or fine tooth blade. But if you're doing really tight cuts with it, you're going to need a fine tooth blade and you need to go slower. You can see an example of those really tight cuts on my Halloween jack-o'-lantern. Okay, let's do a wavy cut. I'm using a general purpose blade. It's 10 TPI, and I've got the speed set kind of slow, and I'm literally going to freehand it. And you can see that speed is too slow for this material. Let's go up. See that? See that? Uh-huh. You need to use 2 hands when you're doing this because you're going to get that kind of kickback if you try to go too fast around a curve. See what I'm saying about getting the speed right? And don't push the saw into the wood. Let it do the cutting and you can lead it in. Another type of cut that jigsaws are great for is cutting out little notches. You can even do this with a circular saw and stop at the line. So we're just going to freehand cut this. Okay, and we got to stop right at the point of intersection. Now another trick that I've seen is people pulling the saw toward them by reversing the blade on here to do this cut. One of the reasons that they do that, you saw when I went in, I have almost no foot or base plate on this wood. If you do it the other way and reverse the saw, you have your full base plate on here, but you have to reverse the blade to do it. The reason I don't do that is because the teeth chew into my guide. Here, I tried it, don't like it for that reason, but maybe your saw can take it. Jigsaws are great at cutting out interior spaces. Drill holes that are bigger than your blade into the wastewood area. In this case, that's the interior of the designs. Then drill near to the lines if you'll be cutting on the outside of the lines. And drill wherever it helps you get into tight spaces. This is a bevel cut. As you can see, the end is cut at an angle. Now, I prefer to do these on my miter saw, and you can see my geometric shelves video for how to do that. But you can do them on the jigsaw, so let's try it. If you need an accurate bevel cut, you're going to have to get a meter for this because unlike your miter saw, it doesn't really click into anything. Now I have 2 kinds of digital angle finders here, and the only one that is going to actually work for this, for me, is that one. And these are really cheap. You can see my links below this video for where to get yours. Here's how I set the bevel on my jigsaw, and all of them are going to be different. Some have a lever, some have a tool. I've already pulled mine out because mine has screws on the back side. So here's how I do it. I take my digital angle gauge and I stick it on the side and I make my base plate flush with my bench. I zero it out for that. So that should be my 90 degrees. Then I loosen up these screws and they're tight, of course. Loosen this one. And then I move this thing so that I get close on my little gauge back here to where I want it. and hold it with my belly. Okay, so I'm going to do 30. And when I get close, I'm going to put my base plate flat on here to my bench again. And this thing should zero out. Okay, because this is flat. It's still at 90 degrees. And when I'm moving is my jigsaw, I hope. And then when I get it close, hopefully, of course, it's moved again. But I want to thumb tight these little screws to kind of hold it in to make it easier for me to get an exact angle and tighten it up. Now, this is the way I do it. I don't do it often. So if you know of a better way, please do leave it in the comments. Okay, I set my bevel to about 30 degrees on here. And the problem I have with doing this with a jigsaw is the angle, because I'm having to hold this pretty far over that way to get my foot flat on there. And it's a little harder to control, I think, but let's give it a try. And there it is. Let me turn this over so you can see it. Now, I didn't use a straight edge on it, so it may not be a perfect line, but it did cut the angle on it very well. Let me see if I can turn this so you can see the angle. Okay, in case you're wondering how I get this back to 90, I take my digital angle finder, put it on my bench, and zero it to the bench. And then stick it on here. And guys, this is just one of the ways I know to do it. Maybe you have other ways of doing it. But take my speed square and put my little plate, base plate, on it. And pull it around until the base plate is flat on there. And then tighten up the screws, kind of thumb tight. Make it a little harder to move. And just keep going with it until I get everything dead center flat. Now, if you know another way to do this, this is just for demo purposes. But if you know another way to do it, please let me know. Now, there are a couple of other jigsaw cuts that I think are way too sketchy to do, but I'll tell you about them. One is ripping down a board this way, long ways, right? And, you know, if you're going straight down the center, maybe you can get the foot on there. If you can get a straight edge on it, maybe it will work. You know, the jigsaw is a lot safer than a table saw. So if you're scared of the table saw, maybe this is the way to do it. Or even with the circular saw, maybe this is a little safer to you. But it's going to be hard to keep it accurate all the way down. The other one is I don't know, this is real sketchy. It's called a plunge cut. And it's where you tilt this up and plunge the blade into the center. Listen, that gives all kinds of chatter and kickback. It could break your plate, and that's going to be like shrapnel. So I think that one is extra sketchy. But you do you. Well, I sure hope you enjoyed these tips on cutting with the jigsaw. Be sure to subscribe to this channel. Come on over and visit me at heartwoodart.com. Get on the newsletter so you know when things are happening. And get to cutting. I'll see you in the shop.